What's going on, everybody? I hope everybody's having a great day. I am here with the famous AMC Bigums. Him and I have worked together on a few projects now. It's always a pleasure. And we believe that we found something that's going to enlighten people on how the markets are working right now, and how some things changing that are going to be in the benefit towards not only just your meme stocks, but the general good of the market and the health of the market in whole. So, Bigums, what's going on? Thanks for coming on and hanging out with us. Are you there, Bigums?
You hear me, man?
Yep, I can hear you now.
There you go. Sorry, my thing was muted. Yeah, another thing we're going to talk about today is going to be what we're going to talk about is going to be ISDA and how it's going to affect your bank and the economy overall too. So a lot of stuff going on around the world, you guys.
Yeah, and so what actually just with that, we're getting right into the juice, right? We don't want to waste our time. Exactly what we have up right now that you guys will see is the basically the testimony of Gary Gensler that was released today. It was released before the United States Senate Committee of Banking, Housing and Urban Affairs, and it covered a lot of stuff. We're going to go into and kind of try and get into the nuts and bolts of it. So, Bigums, I'm sure you're with me, right? You know where I'm kind of going into the document.
Yep. Yeah, I'm already at the Treasury.
Okay, so what we're looking at, guys, is what we're going to talk about particularly is the Treasury component of what's was kind of addressed today. So and I'm just kind of going to wrap through it. I'm going to go ahead and just read it. All right. So, and this is quoted from Gary Gensler's testimony. So first, let me turn to the Treasury market. The $22 trillion market is an integral to our overall capital markets as well as the global markets. It is a base upon which so much of our capital markets are built. Treasuries are embedded in money market funds, a myriad of other markets and financial products, and priced off of treasuries. And they are an essential part of our central bank's toolkit. They are considered a risk-free asset, not just here in the U.S., but globally. And how we as a government and taxpayers raise money, and we are the issue of the treasuries. So let's talk about, now that you kind of have an idea of what it is, and I'm sure the majority of you guys watching this do, we're going to look at some of the things that he's proposing to kind of address with the treasury market in whole. And he's asked the staff to work with their colleagues at the Department of the Treasury and the Federal Reserve on how they can better enhance resiliency and competition in these markets. To the extent that this market is more efficient, they could potentially save money for U.S. taxpayers and lower the cost of our debt. Okay, so what they're doing is they're seeking recommendations from external groups, and we're going to get into that, of Group 30, which is a big one, and the Interagency Working Group. They've offered some potential workarounds for central clearing for both cash and repo treasuries. Bigums, so based off of what I just said, do you have any input that you kind of want to say on that in terms of what you read from the testimony?
No, not on that part. But we'll just get into the treasuries here real quick and what they've been using them and how they've been propping everything up.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry. Didn't mean to
No,
cut you
because
off.
then that'll lead right up into what you're going to go ahead and talk about next.
Before we do, though, I want to finish the last part of this. So the second request he has is no, and that's okay. I should have just read it all the way through. But furthermore, I've asked staff to reconsider some initiatives on Treasury trading platforms and also to consider how to level the playing field by ensuring that firms that significantly trade in this market are registered as dealers with the SEC. And Bigums and I talked about this. To me, that implies that there probably are several firms, and the word significantly means probably some large volume trading going on these Treasury trading platforms that are not registered dealers with the SEC.
Yeah, so then also on top of that, a lot of people are wondering what, this repo and these treasuries and why they matter. And if you look at this chart here, actually, it shows you guys that over the last couple of years, you guys have been seeing those repos being used more and more and more. They're hitting astronomical numbers. And you guys can see that the yield on these, and they're actually astronomical as well. So they're making more on these than they're on stock. So this is how they're actually propping everything up and keeping the market afloat.
Yep, you've got something that these guys, a tool that basically ISDA has enabled them to do, which you guys know. We'll talk more about that. That it's more profitable for them to trade in these than it is actual securities at this point in time, especially with the way that all this is kind of designed in their favor.
and there's way less risk because, like we're going to go over here soon, as we just read that these are considered riskless. So that on top of it's pretty big collateral for them.
Well, and
But
that's pretty much, significant. Like that's a big word, right? Riskless. That's literally how they look at these things, and the vessels and tools that they use, we're going to get into, are just it's going to blow your mind.
should we go over the numbers here quick, or
Yeah,
do you want
let's
to get
do no, let's do that. So let me pull up your screen real quick, and you can go ahead and talk about the numbers right here.
Yeah, so a lot of people talk about the derivatives market, and this is one of the things I've been now learning, that this the dollar, every dollar in the world is basically been bought, sold, like it's beyond spent more than anything else. And what they do basically is spend all this money, a majority of this, just to hide it all. If you look down here at these numbers, you can see that you got the IRS, and it's got all these things broken down, equals the 5 quadrillion, 900 trillion, 265 billion amount. But if you guys see this OIS, it's basically the majority. And as we looked up the OIS, these are overnight swaps. So what they're doing is they're putting these in at a super fixed low rate, and they're using these to overnightly push things back. So they're propping everything up with these treasury bonds, and it's like I said, it's just a big joke. If you look at, like I said, basically our entire debt is from them trying to hide the fact that they're stealing everything from us, and the fact that there's no longer the dollar anywhere is, they're all worthless. Think about this. How can every nation in the world be in debt, but we're still spending money? On top of that, you have all these billionaires that are holding all this money, not putting it back in circulation. They're putting it to the Cayman Islands. They're moving it all over the place. So all that money and taxes that they're supposed to be paying, the middle class is paying when they're already paying 23% of that. So now they can't afford to put anything in circulation. So now what can they do? They just print, and then inflation goes up. So this is all massive reason why we're in the situation that we're in.
It was interesting because I kind of compared the overnight interest swaps to the repo market, because essentially what these guys, these are big banks that are borrowing, and these banks, they go and borrow, and like Bigham said, they do it at a fixed interest rate that's probably very much in their favor, and they get their cash, they use it for whatever they need to do, and we can think of a million different nefarious reasons, and they post it back the next morning, and they do this over and over and over, and then so when we ask questions like, what's Goldman Sachs, how are they not defaulting, how are they managed to still keep rolling? And it's these swaps, and you could see as clear as day why the chart, I mean, there's probably a reason why it's on that little circular graph, why it's more than half of what it is of like what's going on in the swaps market, which is a huge market. Think about this number, right? What was it, a quintillion Bighams is what we were looking at for the actual total number?
We got it up here on the top here. So you got 1 quadrillion, 698, what is that? Quadrillion, 391 trillion, 9 billion.
Yep.
But as you guys can see too on the bottom here, it says 90% of them are actually cleared. So like you were saying, 10% of these aren't even cleared. So if you take 10% of that number, you're at, $60 trillion is being cleared also, that no one's even watching right now. It's crazy.
And so, yeah, like the fact that they say that they only clear 90%, that was a point that I brought up to Bigham's, is like, hey, well, there's another 10% of this that's hanging around. And if you're looking at how large these numbers are, 10% came out to what, $60 trillion?
And it says here also, they're clearing an excess of 3 trillion a day. And if you look down at the bottom, I mean, look at these numbers.
Right.
Weekly, 31 trillion. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that you have $3 trillion daily that they're clearing, right? And I'm sure that number can be give or take, right? I'm sure it fluctuates. But again, going back, that more than 50% of these trades that they're clearing are overnight swaps, overnight interest swaps. So they're just quick band-aids, really. They're just they're like a liquidity need that somebody needs to fulfill overnight, paying low interest on. And what really Bigums and I believe that ISDA is the vessel that they use to do all of this through.
Yeah, exactly. It's these ISDA agreements, these contracts, because we don't have access to that information. Are you looking at my screen?
Yep, I got your screen up.
So we'll just do a quick little ISDA thing here, just so in case you guys don't know what we're talking about. So what's happening right now is you'll have in this first box, as you guys can see, our normal contracts, they all go through here. They go through the clearinghouse, which is backed by the government. So everything's, hunky-dory for sure. But what's going on in ISDA is they take this top path, which is over the counter. So you'll have a hedge fund or a market maker, and this counterparty is always a bank. Well, they're going to these large banks. They're making, as we learned in that overstock lawsuit that you showed me, is they're taking out these contracts with flex options, married puts, and they're basically letting these run out of the money. And if they let them run out of the money, what happens is the bank will say that they sent these shares, and the market maker will say that they got them. And when the time the contract runs out, the market maker will say, "Hey, I sent these back to you," and the bank will be like, "Yep, I got them." And then since nobody ever really sent or received those shares on their books, it looks like everything's hunky dory now. Well, they call that a sham reset or a sham closeout, and that's one of the main ways that they close out FTDs that we found out as well.
Yeah, so if you and I'll link the video, and I'm sure Bigum's will in one of the top or the bottom or somewhere where you can see that. But we, in that entire video, we go over what flex options are, basically how they're custom options with strike dates that have that you and I do not have access to, way far dated. You know what I mean, up to 15 years, and just different things. And again, this is all built around a handshake. In fact, I brought this up to Bigums before we started the video, was that we actually seen ISDA contracts being used in real time without actually knowing it. We did bring up a scene from The Big Short at one point when Charlie and his buddy were looking to get in and meet with JP Morgan, but there's actually another scene as well when Burry's actually going into the offices of Bear Stearns and Goldman Sachs, and is actually trying to build a contract to short the housing market. You'll notice they say like, "Hey, this doesn't even exist," but they're kind of licking their chops. When you break that down, that is pretty much an ISDA agreement. He went in and made an exclusive agreement with the bank. They made a custom priority deal for just him. That's what ISDA is. And remember, though, these are the guys that are playing with billions upon billions of dollars. It's not anybody's just an ISDA member. So check that video out if you have any confusion on that.
Everybody who loves Michael Burr, remember, he might have been the reason and the birth of these ISDA contracts.
At least maybe in the way that they are now, like I said, because it was so custom. They literally built it for him. And so ISDA, I know we talked about this, that we felt like half the community is kind of bought in, and then the other half is like, "Oh, this ISDA shit's boring." But I'm sure Bigums agrees, this is like a really pivotal part in terms of or a crucial element of what's going on, how we're kind of being attacked, and what's going on. And that really brings us to the origin of the video of why Bigums is somebody I trust. I say, I found some new ISDA information that I think is going to be really important. We should bring this to the public. So if you want, Bigums, I'll pull up the...
Let me say one more thing before you go into that real quick. So just before we forget this, a lot of people are going to be like, "Well, what's this have to do with me and Citadel?" Well, let's bring up Citadel and how this affects Citadel. So there's this trading company called Palafox Trading, and they're actually owned by Citadel. So one of the main ways Citadel is able to stay afloat is they are using these repos, and they're probably using those overnight swaps that we just talked about. And this is one of the main ways that they're, again, staying off margin. And if you look over here, it looks like that company actually has over 123 billion in assets, and 80% are owned offshores. So, as you guys can see, this is definitely affecting the trade as well. These repos over and over, and it's helping Citadel be propped up from these margins, these market makers.
Right. Well, they're just using Parafox as a vessel to participate in these repo markets, and kind of, it's like a fucking money pinata, to be honest, right now for these guys. They're like, holy shit, you know what I mean? So it makes sense, and that's why I think that what we're going to show them is makes it a little bit more juicy as well, right?
Yep. Yeah, this next stuff's real good. So this is actually some good news for once, people.
Yep. And so let's go ahead and minimize that. Okay, so I have this up now. This is from ISDA. And basically, we're looking at here is they're conducting a survey. And I told you we're going to get back to group of 30, and that's kind of where we're rounding out. So they're going to be doing, well, I'm just going to read it to you guys. So they're going to conduct a survey of members and non-members to inform its position of ongoing efforts to incentivize and or potentially require additional clearing of U.S. Treasury securities and repos. That's like just right there. That line alone is pretty big. Okay, require additional clearing of U.S. Treasury securities and repos. And what they're doing is they're conducting this survey. So they're asking some questions. We're going to go over them. But through the questions below, is it specifically looking for feedback regarding the legal, operational, regulatory, including market regulation and capital implications and policy issues associated with United States Treasury clearing, with a focus on client clearing and how reforms in this market would impact the derivatives markets. And Biggums and I were talking about this earlier. The derivatives markets is trillions upon trillions of dollars that is all being funneled through shady practices, and is the contracts basically being abused. And
we just looked at it, man. It's in the quadrillions, man.
And so basically, let's get into kind of the background of this. So in 2021, the Group of 30 working group and the Treasury Market Liquidity published a paper on steps towards increased resilience in the United States Treasury market, which includes recommendations for clearing all of the United States Treasury repos as well as all United States Treasury securities executed on electronic interdealer trading platforms that offer anonymous trading. Okay, so let's break that down. Biggums, let's simplify that for them.
All right, so are you on my screen?
Let me tune back into your screen real quick here. All right, we're there.
All right, so as we were going over this graph before, so the problem is right now these guys come to a master agreement. So the people that clear these trades are the banks. So they're going to clear 100% of the trades. Why? Because obviously they're going to make money every single time, so they're never going to say no to a contract. And my one tinfoil hat quick is I think these master agreements, because a lot of them are done on paper with credit support annexes, they might have been in that fire, just saying. But with this new update, what they're basically saying is instead of the bank right here clearing this, they would have these two write the contract, then they would have somebody up here clear this contract instead of having these credit support annexes just slapped on it.
Right. So and I think a cool way to think about that is like, think about an escrow that's not on anybody's side, that's collecting the collateral, that's collecting the securities, the treasuries, the bonds, whatever's being traded in this agreement, and they're holding it all. And so they're going to make sure, like, they're not going to let, like, if somebody fails, it's not like you're going to have a bank saying, like, oh, it's okay, like, we'll keep that cool, like, because we're both making money off of this, right? Like, you're going to have somebody that's saying, hey, we're being watched, and so we need to watch you guys, and you fucked up here. Look, they're going to have to take your collateral. Look, you made a bad decision with whatever. So they're basically proposing that there's going to be some really, nice oversight in what's going on here. And so
Can I just cut you off for 1 second?
Yeah, go ahead.
And then just to also show why this is a big deal is when we just looked at that number of the outstanding debt of the 6 quadrillion, you guys saw that the OIS swaps, the overnight swaps, those are unregulated, and those are what is so massive. So what this is going to do is actually start to regulate those. So that's another reason why. So this is how we can get out of our national debt without taxing the taxpayers, is we clear this mess up. Sorry, go ahead.
No, and I think that it's super important to realize. So it's not just open, or overnight swaps. It's not just interest rate swaps. It has to do with inflation swaps. Like it all of this is tied in, like I said, and all packaged under one neat little ISDA bow. You know what I mean? It really is all of these swaps markets that are going on. This is what they're using, I think, to gain liquidity, to continue to fuck us, right? So everybody asks the questions like, how are they keep doing this? How are they keep doing this? Why isn't margin calls happening? Well, they pretty much have an infinite liquidity pool here. working handshake ISDA agreements with each other. And so the idea, there's going to be some oversight that they're going to have to be centrally cleared. It's going to be done through computers. It's basically extremely good news. And so we'll get into, so actually let me do this. So Group 30 is a company that's proposing some of these changes that we are going to go over. But what I'll do is I'll show you who Group 30 is. Let me pull up my screen now. And we're looking at Group 30 here. Okay, so this is the Consultative Group of International Economic and Monetary Affairs, and they are a big, big group of people. So their leaderships are former governors of the Bank of Israel, former chairman of JP Morgan Chase. We have the chairman of Singapore, the European Central Bank former president, right? And those are the leaders at the top. But I'm not going to go through every single one of these people. But just to give you an idea, Institute professor at MIT for economics, former governor of Mexico, chief economic advisor for Alliance, right? Former president of the Federal Reserve. These are like if you were going into a party and you were going to be there with like the best celebrities in the world, right? Every famous movie star and musician. This is that version in the economic world. These are the people that are proposing this shit. So to me, that's actually a pretty good sign, right? These people, if the fact that they're saying, hey, and it might be not even from a position where they're actually scared of what's going on, right? A lot of these people probably have children and they have kids, and they're like, this is not what is going on is not going to leave a better world for, the people that I care about. And I think that's why they're saying, hey, something needs to be addressed with this. So kind of gives you an idea of who Group 30 is and the people that are involved with it. So going back to the document itself, we can take a look at some of the recommendations. So here's what they're proposing, right? So they're presenting this to all the members and non-members, and they're basically saying like, hey, what seems like this is going to be the best option for you cost-wise and everything else, right? So we'll just go over the recommendations. So recommendation number 2, which recommendation number 1 is, I think, the general background. So we'll go into recommendation 2. It says all trades of Treasury securities and Treasury repos executed on electronic interdealer trading platforms that offer anonymous trading by interposing an interdealer broker between buyers and sellers should be centrally cleared. So if these guys are trading, even if it's anonymous, even though they're doing it through the computers, even if they're doing it through ISDA agreements, somebody's going to be centrally clearing that party.
Which that should cover that also, that 10% that me and you were talking about earlier.
Yep.
And that's $60 trillion, guys. That's a lot of money.
And so recommendation number 3 is Treasury repo should be centrally cleared. Pretty simple. Recommendation number 4 is market participants and regulators should continue to study on how to do client cash trades of treasuries might be best centrally cleared, including via the sponsored clearing model, and assess the private and public policy cases for central clearing using whatever is the optimal model. Recommendation 4, I'm sure after reading that, Biggums, you probably agree, that's the least attractive option in my opinion, because it says that, hey, we're going to just study how to do this, and then we'll see if it fits, if centrally cleared shit fits better in the future. We'll keep an eye on it. To me,
yeah,
that
like you were saying, pretty much what this is saying, guys, is if you guys can't figure something out on your own, number 6 is figure something out to clear this mess up. If you can't, you're getting centrally cleared no matter what. As you guys can see, every other option is centrally cleared. So they're basically saying you guys are done unless you can come up with some magic carpet here on recommendation 6.
And it says right here, so the G30 paper notes that the benefits of wider central clearing of United States Treasury repos and cash include greater transparency, which I think is what we care about the most of, right? And counterparty risk management, reduction of counterparty credit and liquidity risk through netting of the counterparty exposures and application of margin requirements and other risk mitigants. So they're saying, hey, that regardless if you're doing is the contracts or not, and you guys both say it's good, you made this handshake deal, you're still going to be centrally cleared, and centrally cleared encompasses all of that: counterparty risk management, reduce credit and liquidity risks through netting of counterparty exposures, which means that they're not going to be taking any trades. Like, you're not going to be able to engage in these trades or these swaps unless we know that you've got the mustard to put on the hot dog kind of thing. Like they're talking about margin requirements and other risk mitigants. So they're obviously really concerned by putting in this rule that they're going to say, hey, look, the people that we're going to, even if you are going to participate in this, which we're going to centrally clear, you still are going to have to meet all of these different thresholds. And
But
really,
that's a massive deal to you guys. Is we know that every single one of these ISDA banks right now are currently over leveraged. So if this happens and they're looking at it and they're going trying to get cleared, none of them are going to have the leverage at this point to get cleared. So this could completely stop it.
yeah, they might literally actually have to stop doing what they're doing because they won't have the means to make good, right? So, and I'm not saying this is the final nail in the coffin, because again, these are just recommendations being put out that are going to be voted and hopefully approved and put into action. But the fact that this is being talked about is really kind of an interesting thing. And it's like I said, like it could be the nail in the coffin, because if this is how they're kind of pooling liquidity every time they need it, if they're doing it through overnight swaps, then I don't see what's left under the carpet for them to hide under, you know?
Yeah, me either. The only other thing that they can use is that CNS program, but you can only use that so much as well. So yeah, like you're saying, this is the biggest way that they're able to gain liquidity. We also learned in previous lawsuits that some of these regulators will let them know that they're coming before these guys actually, they're going to come up and say, hey, we're going to check out your numbers, but we're coming Friday. So what they'll do is they'll write these ISDA contracts and they'll move shares over to other parts of the country where they're not going to come over. Like FINRA's not going to go over and be like, oh, let me go check the European market also. They're going to move those shares over, and then when these guys come, everything looks hunky dory. So this is a massive, massive, massive. This closes a ton of loopholes.
When they talk about here too, they're just giving examples again because they're fielding questions. It's a survey, but some of the examples they're using that like for benefits of treasury repo clearing is enhanced financial stability, market accessibility, more efficient market structures, less price disparities, and ability to offer longer dated repo transactions. Now I know that might sound scary to you, but the ability to do that is all hunky-dory and fine if they're being centrally cleared, if all the risk mitigants are in place, right? They know that they have the collateral, and it's being done by a party that's overseeing this. It's not, again, a handshake deal like, hey, man, like winking at you like, yeah, everything's good, because that's the current system that we're in. And like you said, we just showed you, a quintillion, whatever the fuck number that was, amount of shit, $3 trillion a day, right?
Shit.
And so there's just a lot going on. Okay, Bigums, I went back to your screen. I don't know if you wanted to jump into where you wanted to go next from here. I think that was pretty much, let me clarify again, and I'm sure Bigums agrees. That's like that document right there is a fucking bombshell. Like that is like as big as it can get when it comes to something that could actually cause some really nasty, nasty problems for them.
Exactly. I mean, like you said, this is going to close a ton of loopholes. And right now, so we had phase 5, and I didn't understand it a while ago. That happened in September, and it follows people that have 750 billion in assets. Well, that's only 19 people in all of ISDA, and September this year. So what that means is, if you look at this chart again, right now the only thing that's happening after phase 5 for 19 people is you have the SEC here, and all they do is watch that the collateral was deposited for those 19 companies. Well, phase 6 happens here pretty soon in September, and that's going to drop down to 50 billion in assets, which is 314 companies, which ends up being 41% of ISDA members. So now, on top of these rules that they're going to have to enforce all these things, if they are going to deposit this stuff, they're actually going to be watched by another entity, which is the SEC. So, like we were saying, everything in ISDA is finally getting monitored, because the whole world, like those people you were showing, when you have the greatest of the greatest minds, are all these people that have been doing this for so long and see this, do nothing but work in this industry. When they're coming at you and saying, this is causing the world to collapse, we have to do something or the world's going down. I mean, that's a huge deal.
So yeah, no, that's literally just to go back to the testimony that a lot of you guys are pumped about, and you for good reason. Again, they are going to be registered. They must be registered as dealers with the SEC. So he's saying that if you're trading significant in these markets, you're going to need to be clear with the SEC. So you got, again, it's the contracts that we talked about, potentially getting centrally cleared, having all these risk mitigants put on them, being forced to basically, if you want to play the game, you're going to have to play by the rules. And then again, registered by the SEC. So I've been critical of Gary Gensler in the past, and I know a lot of us have, but these are, like I said, real big bombs. And the fact that he's saying these things leads me to believe that his eyes definitely on the prize, actually. Like, he's looking at the things that he needs to be looking at.
Yeah, I mean, everything that we've DD discovered, he's definitely looked at, and he's doing things because, as you guys can see, look at that number. This is the world's biggest secret. Money isn't real anymore, you guys. It has no value. Nothing in the world is backed by gold. Nothing in the world is backed. It's all been bought and sold and bought and repackaged and sold so many times that they have to spend more money in the world hiding it, propping up the United States, propping up everything because they have no other choice. And the problem is now that you have the middle class figuring this out, you have the middle class buying crypto. This is why you guys understand. Biden said crypto, or not crypto, Bitcoin's national matter of national security. Because if you have all the rich people taking all this money out of circulation, all this, and they're all funneling it out there, doing all this tax evasion, whatever they're doing, and now you have the middle class starting to take the money out. Who are you guys relying on? You're relying on poor people for to get money circulating in the country. Well, that they can't afford it. They can't even afford. Most of them are living with their parents. How are they going to afford that? So what are we doing? We have no choice but to make the printer go burr. But the problem is the printer's going burr for these companies with PPP loans and all. It's going to the wrong places. So eventually, this bubble's got to collapse. And if this market, this is why I keep saying lately, like, if this happens and they regulate this, if you have a bank that's in ISDA, and you can check right now, it's just Google ISDA members. It's very quickly. You will want to get out of that bank. They're bound to collapse. Look at that number. It's too big. You get your money out, make sure it's safe. Go to a credit union. Go to a local mom and pop bank. Your local mom and pop bank. Just make sure they're insured and they give good rates and everything. But they're not participating in shady stuff like these guys. We have the power to take all this back. It's these banks, man. They're the whole problem to all this. We all think it's hedge fund and market makers, but these banks are their lifeline. But go ahead, Randall. That's all I had to say.
No, that's literally it. I mean, we've kind of been saying this. I mean, I've been screaming that since from the rooftop since day one. Is that I think that the institutions and the banks work hand in hand, and I think they both fuel each other. But the banks are, again, not our friends in any case, and again, that's all under the guise of ISDA. When we look at more of the Gary Gensler testimony too, you'll notice he talks about security-based swaps, which they give credit to is the reason why the 2008 financial crisis happened, and not more importantly, but another reason Archegos Capital is why that family office failed. Again, family office, we could talk about why it's so important for them to be registered with the SEC, because family offices like them were able to participate in these type of swaps, these type of repo transactions, and is a big reason that they probably were able to fly under the radar for so long or got as far as they did, because there was no real oversight. So again, the fact that he's saying these different things is really, really good. And the beauty of this, and I think why this is so important and why it's got me juiced, is because, look, it's not just the SEC that's saying this, but you also have ISDA working on. They're proposing ideas. They're saying, hey, we need to address this. So it's not just the SEC. You have the big boy players that are also saying, hey, this is something to be looked at. So the stories kind of match up. Like, I really believe the shit's is getting looked at. And so the fact that, again, I'm sure Bigums agrees that the swap markets, the repo markets, and the majority of us know how the repo market's being used, but the swaps is just as big of a part. And again, ISDA's kind of just the cloak that allows them to do that. And so the biggest takeaway I want you guys to have from this is that they are looking at it. They're proposed a bunch of different options. And really, I think that it's going to boil down to, look, it's going to be centrally cleared. And if that happens, then there's some major oversight on all this fucking shenanigans that we're seeing that I just don't think are going to be fly anymore. You know, these numbers are not sustainable.
Exactly. Just to make you guys more clear too on when, so a lot of people are like it's going to be corrupt. Well, this company that's going to be oversighting it, since ISDA's worldwide, it's not going to be like the SEC. It's not going to be a government. It's going to be a group of one person from each government that's going to watch us. So it'll be like a world-class government watching it. So that will ensure that there's a lot less corruption, because all of a sudden you would have to have the whole nation, the whole world in on it, because you're going to have basically the whole world sitting at this group of table that's going to be watching it. So it's going to be a very, very good step on that too, with regulation and corruption and stopping people like Hester Pierce having control.
And I think that's pretty much like, that's the majority. I think it's pretty clear what I was trying to say. I don't know if you have anything else that you want to add on, Bigums, or anything that we missed that we talked about we wanted to go over.
No, I mean, I felt like we covered everything. That was a great video, a lot of information.
Yeah, and like I said, guys, you need to. A lot of this was ISDA talk, and again, the first video they did will definitely brush you guys up on that. You know, there's so much more information too. Like as we were going through this, it opened up other doors, so you guys can expect more. But I don't want you to downplay it. I want you guys. This is really, really big news. I haven't been excited as for something like this in a long time. I guess the only killer about this is one thing. I guess let me pop all you guys is deflate your heads for a second. But we won't know the results of what they're even proposing for approval until March 17th. So unfortunately, that's unfortunate. But that's just on the ISDA side of things. The SEC looks like they're moving at a little bit of a faster pace, but I think that we're both the paths are going to cross, you know?
Yeah, but that'll go fast, man. A month, that's no big deal.
Yeah, it really is. It'll come before we know it. All right, so I think we can close it up here.
Yeah, man.
Thanks. It was a good video, dude. Of course, I'm glad that you came. For everybody else, I look forward to seeing you guys on the next one. Catch you on the flip side. Love you a long time. Peace.
Thanks, man. Have a good one.